Hi guys, it's Frank with Tiny Plastic Spacemen, and I'm sure you're curious to see what all of those Titan body parts look like all clipped and trimmed. Well, this is the video for you. We'll be doing the weapons in a future video in the series, so check that out coming up soon. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or comments, just put them in the comments field down below. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here we are with the next installment of the Warlord Titan build here on Tiny Plastic Spacemen. Hope you're enjoying the video series so far. So you can see here in one box we've got all of the resin pieces for the kit in a single box. So you remember these were everything was spread across two boxes. The second box was maybe about half the weight of the first. I don't have a full weight. I should though, because I kept all the pieces that I've cut off. So I'll show you. Basically what I've done is remove the casting gates from everything. So this here is what we call a casting gate. All of these little like tiny bits of sprue pieces that let the air bubbles come out and everything. So I removed that from almost all of the pieces, and except for obviously a few just here, just so I can demonstrate how I removed everything. But first I just want to show you, these are all the casting gates that I've removed. So you can see all of these gigantic chunks of resin. They might not be focusing all that great, but that's alright. I don't really want to focus on these too much, but yeah, all of this is, sorry that's quite loud, but all of this has been removed over the past couple days. I'm not able to work on this like, like solid. I do have a day job and, a real life and everything, so working as quickly as I can on this, just because I'm quite excited to get it done. But what I'm going to do with these is actually with stuff like this, I will probably use for mounting busts and model heads and stuff like that. 28 mil scale heads to paint, just so I have something like nice and solid to put them on. Pieces like this I'm going to use as basically like barriers and obstacles and stuff like that. I'm gonna trim all of these bits off and then just glue this onto a piece of plastic card, paint it up, and there you go. It's I've seen it done on a couple tables and it looks really cool. And obviously there's quite a few of this particular shape, so like that one is very similar. So I imagine Forge World, they probably have, when they cast these things up, they all of these pieces are fitted on by hand, all these tubes and stuff like that. So anyway, I've got lots and lots of these now, and from previous kits that I've done, like for Sakarans and stuff like that. Yeah, so anyway, enough of that. Those are just spare pieces. Put those away. Let's look at these. So first of all, this is the bag that had all the really small pieces in it. The smallest pieces. So you can see there's things like this, which is one of the pistons, the hydraulic pistons. These semi-delicate, but not really all that delicate, handrails. I think the las cannons are in this as well. Yeah, you can see some of the pieces of the las cannons there. The only parts I didn't leave in this bag are the ones I'm going to need almost immediately, which are these little, the piston rings that go around the hip joints, which I believe are these, yeah. So these were, both of these pairs of pieces were in this bag here. So I've left them out because I'm going to need them almost, well, not immediately, but pretty quickly into the build. So there's that bag, and you see how much smaller it is now. So, and also these are the void shield generator pieces; those go with that. This here, these are the armor plates. Mostly, I think the leg armor plates and the knees. These have all been casting-gated, so you can see I've removed all of those. So I'll put those there. These pieces, I'm set these aside for a second. We'll come back to those. And that one. And what else? We've got, these are almost the first pieces I think that I'm going to be getting to, which are the toe pieces. You can see there. And these sort of like the shin muscles, I guess, or you know, the pieces that go prop up against the lower leg. So I'll be needing those almost right away. And I'll put those there. These are the next bigger pieces. These are quite chunky, starting to get really big pieces now. These are like elbow pieces, and what else is there? These are like some of the corner pieces of the main body. So those have all been cut down. You can see how much room there is now in the box. There's so much space now. I've removed the about half of the bubble wrap that was in here. So just real quickly, I can't remember what, I think these are the lower leg fronts of the lower leg, and then I think there's pieces that fit on those. So yeah, those have been decastigated. Of course, these are going to be painted separately, so I'm going to leave them as is. You can see that there's still some cleanup that I have to do, and that is fine. I'll show you the tools that I use to do that, which will be pretty quick, really. This is I think like the top of the neck armor plate. And just real quickly, we've got these are the shoulder armor plates. That goes that way up. More of the corresponding piece of this is in one of the bags that I showed you. Oh no, sorry, it's there. But there's a very similar looking piece. I think you know the one I mean. And underneath this are all the bigger pieces. So anyway, but you can see the rest of the stuff that they're all decastigated. Probably the hardest one to do was this one. But it didn't really take all that much effort. I just used this cheap pair of side cutters and just did about maybe the first third of this one. And then I couldn't get quite halfway, so I did the first third of this one because there's only two pieces here. And yeah, so basically just levered it off. And I wasn't too worried about this one, especially because this is going to be hidden. Remember the bottom of the body is going to actually just fit right on top of all of this. So the only thing I was possibly worried about was maybe it coming off of this edge here. So it's going to be covered up by all these armor plates and all this detail and everything. And like I said, you know, if you do mess up something and you cannot be bothered to putty over it, let it dry and sand it down, then, you know, some rust or, well, not mud in this case, because that's pretty high up. That's going to be about a foot off the ground. I put it in there. So there's the 2 feet, and again, all those toe pieces are going to fit around it, and then the shin muscle pieces and I don't know why I'm calling them the shin muscle pieces, but you know what I mean. Those supports for the lower leg. So yeah, that is just about everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these bags back and then just show you very quickly. I do have a video where I show how to deal with casting gates and stuff like that, and clipping and trimming. But what I'm going to do is just move this box out of the way real quick and see if I can find a safe place for it. And I'm just going to reposition the camera just a bit and show you how I deal with these casting gates. So just back in just a moment. Okay, so here's the pieces that I've left untrimmed. These are as they come right out of the box. So what I've got are, I'm not sure what the pieces are actually. These are the lower leg pieces I was talking about though. And I think this is the upper leg armor plating. So those are the pieces. I this has got to be a weapon arm or something like that piece. So I've got this. This is a cheap pair of side cutters. Just Work Zone is just a cheap British brand, and I would suggest getting a half decent pair. You don't have to get like Vice Grip brand, Irwin. I do like the Irwin stuff. But this one I just keep on hand. I usually use this for clipping wires and stuff like that on my RC car stuff. The other thing, the next tool I use is this. This is my beloved pair of Xuron. Let's see, they're 410T micro shear, or these are just labeled 410 micro shear from Xuron, Xuron. I do love these. This is actually my second pair because I had to replace, well, I didn't have to replace it, but I was trying to cut a casting gate that was too big, and I actually broke the tip off of my first pair. But that is now my backup pair, and this is my main pair now. So these are really great, nice and sharp. For removing mold lines and smoothing things over, I have this. The Model Mate, I did a video on these, on this particular thing. Anyway, I do love this. It's basically a hardened steel tip. It's like a tri-blade thing. It's got a nice long edge to it, and then an angle, and then a nice point that's very sharp. Very good tool. And this is my Swan Morton scalpel blade holder with not exactly a fresh scalpel blade, as you can see. I've been using it to do green stuff, but I have probably 6 of these by now, and they're just kind of all over the place. Whenever I lose them, I just kind of order a couple more, just so I eventually have enough that they're around. I can find them when I need them. And then the final thing for the really thick stuff is this. This is an X-Acto 235 razor saw. You can get them in different sort of teeth per inch measurements. I'm not sure which one this is, but this is the 235. Tamiya do a very similar tool. I think they all fit pretty much the same blade, and you can replace these quite easily, actually. Basically like a pin vise, or I've never actually replaced this, but yeah, there we go. And then there we go. So now you can replace these really easily, and the handles are pretty much universal. So you can get sets of these, I believe, or you can get just the blade if you already have the handle. So very, very, very handy. You can also get Tamiya. I'm not sure if X-Acto do it, but I believe Tamiya do. They do a handle that is basically something like this, that has micro razor saws. So it's about the size of a hobby knife blade, basically. But they're basically razor saw edges, so they're very handy. So anyway, the razor saw is the last thing I'm going to get to. I just kind of got off track there a bit. So what I'm going to show you first are how I basically took care of removing the casting gates off for everything. Firstly, here, what you don't want to do is just break these off, although one of these is already broken from transit. And actually it looks like I need to do a little bit of a repair here as well, so I'll show you how I handle that. So what I need to do is basically just with these micro shears, you can put it right up to the edge and clip, and then ignore this. I'll fix that in a second, but you see how flat that edge is now. It's very, very good. So you can go right up to the edge of the actual model, clip, and then the sprue goes flying off. It's actually right here, so because I have a nice backdrop. So yeah, now I forgot about this piece. The reason why I didn't cut the rest of the gate off is because of this exact thing here. So what I'm going to do is cut it not right up to the edge, but pretty close, and then just trim it down piece by piece. Now, of course, Citadel do make their own, or Games Workshop, they make their own clippers, which are fine. I haven't heard any real complaints on them. I just prefer the feel of these with the rubber handle. And also these are actually, I think, a bit cheaper. So what I'm going to do is hope that this glue is usable. Looks like it is. And this is Deluxe Materials. This is the stuff I like to use the best. This isn't the really thin stuff. They have very thin that I think it bonds from 1 to 5 seconds. This is the medium, and then they have a very thick, which is blue. The very fast glue that they have is red. This is yellow, obviously, and the thick glue, which is like a gel, basically, a lot like the Gorilla Gel. These are really good. If you can find them, do give them a shot. Okay, so basically this is just like gluing any other resin piece to another resin piece. There we go. And let it rest. Okay, so that is that repaired. I think what happened there is I tried clipping the... I can't remember exactly why it broke off. It definitely wasn't in transit. That was something I did. I think what I had done was try to clip this in one go. And yeah, don't do that. Okay, so the next piece is sort of a combination piece. And I set this aside especially because of these little bits of sprue, which are, when the original 3D print of this is made, it's probably, these are just tiny bits of round styrene rod that are cut and shaped to fit and then super glued in place so that they let the air bubbles out of here. Because if you imagine, this is the basically a rectangular cubic volume, so it's like, you know, like this. The resin is poured in through the top and it fills in from the bottom. Once it gets to here, if there are any air bubbles in here, they're going to have a hard time to kind of get up through this shallow bit here. So they added these little air tubes basically, and then so the air kind of comes up through here and then out through these air tubes as well as out through here. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense. So I left these because these little tubey bits, and they are, you know, sprues basically, they are easy to forget. And there are like kits like the Sakaran where they're kind of all over the place. And in some places they are actually sort of sheets of triangles. If you've seen the Sakaran kit unbuilt, you'll know what I mean. Okay, so now we've clipped off all the small pieces, and you see how we clipped off the thickest piece, which isn't really all that thick. So it's very easy to get to with the sharp detail clippers. So what I'm doing is now I can get right up to the edge and just kind of have a feel around it, and then hold that, and it actually pops off really easily. But if it didn't, this would be able to just go right through that. And now just to clean this up, because this is going to be semi-visible, I've just got my mold line tool, and I'm just scraping along the edge here to smooth it out. And basically what I'm doing is I haven't cleaned any of these parts yet. I can feel the waxiness, a little bit of oil or something that's on here, on the fingers from all of these parts that I've been clipping. So I'm going to wash all of these. If there's any sprues or like serious bubbles, like there's a tiny bit of a bubble there, but I'm not even going to worry about that. You're not going to see that on the finished model because it's going to be basically like this. If there's any like really bad warping, I'll take care of that while I'm washing it with the hot water. But I'm not going to attack any mold lines or anything like that. And there are a few places, like right here. If you can see that in the light. Again, this isn't something I would normally do, but just for the purposes of the video, just clean up with this. And that's mostly gone now. It's pretty much gone there. So that kind of thing I will do as I'm gluing the piece onto the model. So I'm not going to worry about that sort of thing right now. I do want to get to building the model. Okay, so now with this one, this is probably equal of the as big a piece of sprue or casting gate that I've seen on any of these pieces. This is a very thick chunk of resin, this particular part of the model. Right now I'm just clearing off these small bits of sprue, and just to kind of clear things out of the way. So I'm going to have to get in there with a file or something like that. So I have two options with these, and I'm going to show you both. I'm going to keep these handy because I will need those later. So I've got the razor saw, and I've got the big thick, you know, not very sharp, just the blunt force tool. So knowing how this will be fitting with the knee piece fitting right on top of that, I'm not too worried about if this casting gate breaks off any of this. But from the way I've been working with this resin, and remember this resin's hand mixed as far as I'm aware. It's mixed and tinted probably by hand, by weight. You can watch prop maker videos and see how these things are made. So what I'm going to do, I have a decent feel of how sort of rubbery or plasticky the resin is. So I'm just going to have a go and just see if this will come off with just using some brute force here. So that slipped, so it's fine. So I'm just going to hold it. Make sure obviously you don't have your fingers near the actual blade bits themselves. I'm just holding the end so I get maximum leverages, and there we go. See how easy that is? Pretty easy. So now I'm just going to set those aside. They're pretty much unnecessary now. And I'm just going to clean this up. I don't need to make it perfect. I do want to make it as flat as possible, but I don't need to make it a perfectly flat surface, because I've got this piece. And you might go, well, that's going to be kind of a pain. But this is a big, long tool piece. Look at that. And it's reversible as well. So I'm already on the second side of it. For small models like infantry and stuff like that, I do shorten it, but for models like this, it's good to lengthen it so you can get in there and flatten all that down. And look at that. Look how flat that is now. Nice and perfectly smooth. So now I can also get in here. And the reason why, even though this isn't going to be visible, it's going to be hidden by a piece fitting on top of it, I want maximum surface area. So the glue or the JB Weld or the 2-part epoxy or whatever I use to glue this in place has maximum amount of sticking points there. So before I glue this in place, this part is a bit tricky to get to, but you can get X-Acto blades that are basically chisel points to get into there. Or you can use a Dremel. But I think for the most part, for resin kits, I think Dremels are a bit overkill. I've had them for years to work with RC car stuff, but I think, you know, when you're drilling into metal and plastic a lot, it does help. But I think a lot of modelers see it as sort of a panacea, you know, like a perfect solution thing, but it's not really. It's a bit overkill. So what I'm going to do now, while I have the tool in hand and the model part in hand, I'm going to put some score lines in here. Basically, I'm doing the cross hatching So what this does is it adds surface area. I'm just going to do this top piece here so you can see what I'm talking about, the cross hatching. So hopefully you can see that in the light. You can definitely feel it with the fingernails. And basically these are, I've put in a very rough grid pattern. And what I usually do on critical parts like this, for the piece that fits on top of it, I will put cross hatching on that part as well, but I'm going to put it in the like a 45-degree turned position, so the lines are going this way, if you see what I mean, whereas on this one, this piece, the lines are going this way, so that way there's maximum surface area that is going to go on there. So hopefully that makes some sense. Now, what if the piece is too thick to get at with this thing, or you just don't feel confident, or you just don't have this piece, this particular tool? Well, that's what the razor saw is for. It takes a bit longer. I will tell you that. It's a bit louder. Ideally, I'm going to see, I don't have like a piece of a block of wood or anything, so I'm just going to, the cool thing with this is, I'm just going to attack it here. You can see how close it's, I mean, it's basically a razor, right? So it gets right up to the edge of the plastic piece. So I'm just set it right against the top of the actual model piece. And just like using a wood saw, you give it a couple of, the camera's going to go a bit shaky. If this takes too long, I'm just going to speed it up. Okay, so now you see it's already halfway through. Okay, so that's how quickly you can get through these. And there we go. And now there's absolutely no need to clear off that with the model scraper. Okay, and you see how perfect that that cut is on both sides. Yeah. And so I'm just going to trim off the small bits of sprue. The one thing this does do is create a bit of dust, and if you're doing this a lot and you're in a closed room and you're breathing on this, you don't want to be breathing this resin dust. I mean, you don't want to be breathing any dust, but especially this resin dust. You know, you're basically inhaling plastic dust, and that's very bad. So there we go. And there we go, it's cleared up. I'm just going to smooth out just a bit. Now, if this was a piece that was going to be exposed, like say an armor plate, which is going to be very exposed, maybe go over that with some sandpaper once you smooth it down as much as possible. I think maybe 300 and then 240 and then 200, or no, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. 200, 240, 300. You don't have to go probably too much more than that, but it depends how, you know, what the piece is. So there we go. Hopefully that was helpful. We've got the lower leg pieces decastigated. This, I think it's the upper armor, leg armor, and whatever this part is, trimmed and fixed as well. Actually, I'm just gonna, while I'm talking about it, just trim that off. Just make sure all these pieces are nice and smooth. But obviously, I'm not too worried about this, because you can see that this is keyed to be, it's going to be glued to the side somewhere. I think it's a shoulder, part of the shoulder assembly somewhere. So I just want to make sure that this is smooth, but it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. Yeah, so there we are. That is everything. So again, that's the Xuron 410 Microshear, the X-Acto 235, although there are other varieties available. The three-sided scraper, one of my favorite tools, Swan Morton blade, which I didn't, blade holder, I didn't even get to that. And then just a half-decent pair of side cutter. These happen to be chrome vanadium supposedly, so I don't know if they actually are, but yeah, so that is it. Put the super glue away. I hope you enjoyed that. Catch the rest of the video series. Check back very soon for the rest of the build. Thanks for watching.
So
So there you go, that's everything clipped and trimmed and ready to be washed, which will be the very next video in the series. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to ask any questions or comments that you have down below. And check us out at tinyplasticspacemen.com. On Facebook, just search for Tiny Plastic Spacemen. And on Instagram, we are TPS Painting Studio. So once again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.